Welcome to Implicating the Real. Today's show is part 2 of the conversation began in the previous episode. Let's get right into it. Hope you enjoy. All right, next session. You guys got anything to start it off here?
Nope.
Okay, I'll start off.
We're still talking about God, remember? Like, this is a chapter about God.
Getting there. Only a portion of your entire identity is presently familiar to you, as you know. Therefore, when you consider the question of a supreme being, you imagine a male personality with those abilities that you yourselves possess, with great emphasis upon the qualities you admire. This imagined God has therefore changed throughout the centuries, mirroring man's shifting ideas of himself. This resonates to me.
I'll keep going, right?
Yeah.
God was seen as cruel and powerful when man believed that these were desirable characteristics, needed particularly in his battle for physical survival. He projected these upon his idea of a God because he envied them and feared them. You have cast your idea of God, therefore, in your own image.
That's not the first time I've heard that line, but when I did first hear it, I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, I mean, he's saying that, like, throughout the years we've made God what we envied and feared. And then I just remember, like, Zeus being this real pervert taking on the form of a swan to rape girls. And I'm like, wait, so is that the part that men envy or fear?
Oh, God, no. He's become a swan.
Or is he saying, like, at that time, envy and fear were the standards by which we...
I think it still is.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah.
Like, that's the point, is that, like, the idea of God historically changes over time to fit whatever, you know, the social needs are of the people, right?
Well, the next sentence, you've cast your idea of God, therefore, in your own image. Like, if our own image changes, then I don't think it's necessarily always going to be envy and fear. Like, you could have a God that is love. You know, I feel like a lot of people do.
I guess.
Sure.
Or, like, that's what they envy, right? Like, they need, like, a father figure that loves them.
I guess envy maybe could still apply, or
Yeah.
one could argue.
One could argue. I feel like this comes up a lot in, like, sort of like Christian apologia too, right? Where, like, you give them sort of the, like, here's the New Testament, here's the Old Testament. Why is Old Testament God such a dickhead? Yeah. And then they go like, well, that's just what people needed back then. They, like, needed a strong hand. Like,
Well, and have you ever met the people that are, like, so insistent about how the two are, like, so braided together and they tell the story?
right.
You know, they're, like, really invested in, like, one being, like, the continuation of the other.
Prophecies fulfilled.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, I'm, like, super not familiar with this stuff. What is the time difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament? Like, could it just be explained that God underwent character development between the two?
Oh, God's eternal though.
But also, the
Timeline thing that changes depending on when you think, because, like, some people think that dinosaurs didn't happen, right? That was all fake.
Okay, so, I mean, if you're saying that they happen, like, concurrently, the Old and New Testament, then you could just say schizophrenia.
But the Old Testament, we don't even know how old it is, I don't think, do we?
There's, like,
Parts of it.
certain like historical. Are you talking about, like, how old the writing is, or how old the, like, characters?
Like, I think there's parts of it that, like, we don't know for sure how old those, you know, myths are, like creation myths, like flood myth.
right.
and
The
stuff.
flood myths are, like, really, really old.
Yeah.
But then, like, the conception of it as, like, a written sort of, like, history is, like, pretty old, right?
Yeah.
It's as old as, like, the Jewish faith, right? The Torah.
Right. Do you have any idea at the top of your head how old that is? Like, I don't.
I don't have numbers for you.
I just know that there's, like, it references, like, sort of historical moments that you could sort of cast as being very old, right? Because it talks about, like, movements of, like, groups of people and, like, battles and stuff.
But to answer your question, I think there is a very large space in between, just to give it context. I think that's pretty safe to say, right?
Yeah, and then New Testament's, like BC, like, 30, right?
BC.
Before Christ, 30? Because he dies at, like, 30. So, like, because, like, the New Testament...
That's not BC though, right?
BC, AD.
Did time start after he died or after he was born?
AD is after death.
It means something else.
Anno Domini?
Is that what it is? Anno Domini?
Yeah, the Anno Domini, the year of our Lord.
So, like, the life of Jesus is, like, this middle time that we don't even talk about very much.
Yeah, in the Bible, they don't talk about his teenage years very much.
But I mean, like, we have BC and AD, but then there's like 33 years in between. There's like a little layer in between these.
No,
No,
I forget which year they set as 0. Do you have it?
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of arbitrary.
But yeah, so if you assume like the Old Testament stories are supposed to take place like thousands and thousands of years before that,
Yeah. It's interesting.
we just need to go back and find Lot's wife as
The
like
salt, and then do radiocarbon dating on it, and then we'll know.
That makes sense. I bet somebody's done that.
Yeah.
Multiple people have different.
That salt pillar just has been untouched.
Yeah.
Oh God, what if somebody ate the salt? Oh no.
What if it rained?
They found it and they're really excited about it, and then their like brother like ate it.
Yeah.
They came back to measure it the next morning, and he's like making soup.
Yeah.
A bunch of deer came by and were like, wow, the world's first salt lick. Hell yeah.
In reality, that is inconceivably multidimensional. The old concepts of God are relatively meaningless. So, yeah. Another line where Joe's like, yep, saw that coming.
But then we're about to launch into the rest of the chapter where we're talking about God.
All right, so I think we have to read this part. I guess continuing from there. Even the term a supreme being is in itself distortive, for if you naturally project the qualities of human nature upon it. If I told you that God was an idea, you would not understand what I meant, for you do not understand the dimensions in which an idea has its reality or the energy that it can originate and propel. You do not believe in ideas in the same way that you believe in physical objects. So if I tell you that God is an idea, you will misinterpret this to mean that God is less than real, nebulous, without reality, without purpose, and without mode of action.
I had to like do a little bit of work trying to figure out what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
Because at first I was really confused why Seth was worried about you not misunderstanding what he means by God as an idea. Because there's the colloquial thing of like being able to say like, oh, well, that's just an idea. Like it's merely an idea.
Dismissive.
Right, dismissive. But like I guess I had to remember that idea can be like a dismissive way of like talking about something, right? So I think that's what's going on here when Seth's like, it's an idea, but it's not just an idea, is like, it's an idea, but do not dismiss it, right? So,
Well, it could go back to like what we were kind of going back and forth about with the, I was saying actual probabilities and you were on the potential side, right? Like it's analogous to that, maybe.
There's a line in here where he says, for you do not understand the dimensions in which an idea has its reality or the energy that it can originate and repel. I think it's like what Joe was saying, where like, even though it's an idea, a lot of stuff resulted from that idea. And it's important to just not dismiss it as non-physical.
Well, we get into that in our culture in the last 20 years with the idea of memes. Like the original theory, wasn't it that like, well, I guess do we think of viruses as life or non-life? Like they're kind of in this in-between state, but a meme is compared as an idea to a virus.
Right.
It has its own course, its own life that it like.
it replicates, it mutates, and becomes like more adjusted to its intellectual.
Yeah, just by virtue of being itself, it has its own momentum.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. I think that a lot of people have sort of thought about memes that way too, where there is sort of like this almost like mystical element to like the power behind like a good meme, you know?
Yeah, like you didn't invent something, you like discovered something if you propelled it.
Right. There's like a niche in the collective consciousness that was already there.
Yeah. So that's a cool way of just like expanding of what our idea of an idea is kind of helps here.
Yeah. And like further on, like there's also sort of this longer tradition out of like, I would say like here, what we're about to get, I would say is like maybe somewhat comparable to sort of an idea of like Neoplatonic ideas of God, where like they also would talk about God using the word like logos. It's this idea, it's this word, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like how that doesn't make it diminished from reality, it actually makes it like supreme and above reality, because reality has a lot of like contingent like messiness to it. And being this like logical perfected thing in the idea world like makes it sort of above that, but like generative of the other things.
Yeah. Well, I think you can think of it both ways, but like when you think of like these multiplicities of probabilities, that like all these probable Joes add up to this one platonic ideal Joe.
Yeah. And we're going to get to the point, because I think Seth will say something about it too, but there's this idea of emanation, right? Where it's like, if you're the source, right, the prime mover, right, you're giving the energy into the system, it's that all the other potential things emanate out from that. You know, like they have the metaphor of like a light, right? Like where God is like the light that allows for everything else to like manifest from him, you know?
I can jump ahead. Maybe this is what you're talking about. This private multidimensional self or soul has then an eternal validity. It is upheld, supported, maintained by the energy, the inconceivable vitality of all that is. It cannot be destroyed then, this inner self of yours, nor can it be diminished. It shares in those abilities that are inherent within all that is. It must therefore create as it is created. For this is the great giving that is behind all dimensions of existence, the spilling over from the fountain of all that is. Is that where you're getting that from?
I think it might be on the next page. I'll see if I can find it.
I don't remember the word emanations, but I just love that idea that like, it's kind of saying like, you've been created and therefore you must create. Or we could just wait till we get there. Sorry that I jumped ahead like that.
No, that's okay. I sort of like started jumping ahead too.
It all connects, It's tough when you like have the whole chapter in your head to like go piecemeal and linear,
Mm-hmm.
I did want to say that this last thing about the paragraph we were originally talking about, that about the importance of ideas, kind of a spoiler, but he's about to get into saying that an event we thought was physical was not actually ever physically materialized, but it heavily impacted our course of history, at least.
Right.
Oh my God, I forgot about that part.
That's the best part of the chapter.
Remember a while back, I was like asking you to like guess what Seth's take on Christianity was?
Yeah.
And you kind of got there.
I nailed
Yeah.
it. Let's see. Can I just read I feel like 204 is just like a good...
I'm going to read a little bit on the bottom of 203 and then I'll hand it over to you. Now, your own physical image is the materialization of your idea of yourself within the properties of matter. Without the idea of yourself, your physical image would not be, yet often it is all you are aware of. The initial power and energy of that idea of yourself keeps your image alive. Ideas then are far more important than you realize. If you will try to accept the idea that your own existence is multidimensional, that you dwell within the medium of infinite probabilities, then you may catch a slight glimpse of the reality that is behind the word God, and you may understand why it is almost impossible to capture a true understanding of that concept in words.
God, therefore, is first of all a creator, not of one physical universe, but of an infinite variety of possible existences, far more vast than those aspects of the physical universe with which your scientists are familiar. He did not simply then send a sun to live and die on one small planet. He is a part of all probabilities, right? So we're sort of situating this system where we have like the whole probability sphere. Essentially, you can say like what the universe is an expanded sense of the universe. It's not just like our universe, it's every possible, it's the multiverse, right? The Marvel multiverse.
He had a pretty good term there, medium of infinite probabilities.
Yeah. And so like if you reconceptualize the universe as that thing, you can still have God as the creator of the universe, but just of this expanded sense of what the universe is, right?
Yeah.
I found what an emanation thing is. That's like later. That's like 207.
Okay. Before we get farther than this, I was going to take us on a tiny little tangent, but I think I brought this up before. But Jane's initial idea of reality construction. All right, first I should mention, like, we're talking about this reality and these probabilities, and Seth has these arbitrary terms he introduced for them. So, like, this reality would be framework 1. The framework where all these probabilities exist is framework 2. He had said that when Jane initially was, like, inspired about this material, that she pierced into framework 4. And all of their sessions were, in some sense, like, materialized in that moment. They didn't fit in that moment, and therefore, like, in time, they have these sessions where she's channeling it, all this material. But he's kind of saying like that all came from one moment.
That has sort of like a weird, like, it since we're already talking like a Christian context, that has sort of like a,
Mystical,
conception
yeah.
of Jesus in
Immaculate
Mary.
conception.
Yeah,
immaculate conception sort of feel like the like piercing into like the larger reality and the conception of this thing that then had to like grow and manifest inside of her and then like be birthed into our reality, like
I don't actually remember him saying that.
Okay.
Do you remember what book it was from?
It's Personal Sessions, book 4. I got a couple quotes right here. Rupert's initial idea construction experience momentarily propelled him into Framework 4, where indeed enough energy, creativity, and power was generated to change his life beneficially and open his mind to higher levels of understanding and knowledge. The actual time involved in that experience was minute. In a way, that kind of time use represents the kind of threshold I use in my communications and sessions. If you follow Framework 1's beliefs, the sessions would never have begun. And then a little bit farther, that experience of Rupert's, the idea construction in Framework 4, in time terms would be like a concentrated time pill. There are pills you take that are released in time sequences. So everything I'm saying, in a manner of speaking, was made possible in that experience. In the time framework of Framework 1, the time period could not contain such accelerated mental or psychic motion, so it appears in your terms of time during our continuous session. He uses session. I had to double check that it wasn't sessions. My personality could not be defined or contained within that initial experience either. So you see, strung out through the years, what in other terms I said or was at the time of Rupert's idea construction experience. Last week, he said something about programmed. He used that word programmed. And I think this relates kind of what he's saying.
Remind me how we used that?
like he talked about he had like pre-programmed
Oh, that's right.
sessions.
Yeah.
I like in this one that he's got sort of like a Matrix thing going on, where like
Yeah.
Jane took the red pill.
It's literally uses the pill, but he's saying like that amount of like mental and psychic motion wouldn't fit into Framework 1. So therefore, like that mystical moment for her was the swallowing of this pill. It opened her mind and the sessions flowed out of them.
Yeah.
The reason I'm jumping off is because this idea, changing our idea of what an idea is.
Right. Yeah.
And so the same concept, I brought it up with like the William James book, where she was channeling what William James became after his death, but not necessarily where he was currently, because he already expanded beyond that. So there is this idea that these ideas are alive, like she's having dialogue with Seth. She's having dialogue with William James, even though from their perspective, they're saying like, we're already beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention for some context, like before Seth came through, Jane, I think, just had the idea, wanted to sit down and write an essay that she titled "The Physical Universe as Idea Construction."
Yeah.
But of course, like, Seth says he's been like sort of giving her these ideas and training from since she was a child to be able to do this. So it's not like it came from her necessarily.
But there's some sort of like psychic ability to reach into Framework 4 to like get to this level where we have all this material, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know. Even if it's all bullshit, it's very interesting take on what an idea is or could be. That's what he's trying to get us to understand at this point in the session. There have been parables told and stories of beginnings. All of these have been attempts to transmit knowledge in as simple terms as possible. Often answers were given to questions that literally have no meaning outside of your own system of reality. For example, there was no beginning, and there will be no end. Yet parables have been given telling you of beginnings and endings simply because, with your distorted ideas of time, beginnings and endings seem to be inseparable valid events. I've always liked that, and Seth is one of the hardest things to wrap your mind around in this material is like the idea of the changing our idea of time, I guess. He doesn't say there's no time, but there's relatively no time, from his perspective. And I just want to like connect this to the world of literature. Like, have you heard of the term in medias res?
Mm-hmm.
It basically means like in the midst of things, or like the epic poems of like Homer and stuff. Like I think when they say that in the beginning, but like kind of just like a caveat, like that the story begins in the middle. And I think if you think about it, all stories begin in the middle.
Well, it's like, listener, if you've watched a movie where it starts off and the first scene is a guy like running away from someone and he's knocking stuff over, and then it goes freeze frame and he's like, you're probably wondering how I got here.
Yeah.
That's in medias res.
Yeah, that's a very literal like definition one version of it. But I think like you could do the same thing of any story. Like you can do like the 4-year-old thing, like why, or like what happened before? What happened before that? What happened before that? You can always ask that question.
Yeah.
I just think that we have this idea in our culture, and that it kind of implies a similar thing where there's just like, there actually is no beginning or end. We can call a story a thing and we could say this is the beginning and this is the end, but that's just a particular context that we're choosing to, remove from a broader context.
What do you guys think of like the Big Bang Theory?
Good.
I don't even want to.
No.
I think
I don't want to pick. I'm not trying to pick a fight. I just think it's a.
It's covered in this material.
I mean, it's a theory. We can't really disprove or deny it. It's a working model.
Like something happened, right? But I don't think that's the beginning of time.
I've always thought of it as one of the like biggest like weird like contradictions with like
Sort of a scientific worldview, right?
where it's like if you come from like a background of like, okay, we're going to make a system where we assume that the rules of the universe are universal. They're the same everywhere. They're the same at all times, right? The logical assumption is that the world is continuous, right? And like a reasonable person, like if we didn't have like scientific literature, like saying like, okay, all these scientists believe that there's this Big Bang that like started the world. Like I would be a person that 100% thinks like, well, time is continuous, right? Like nothing changes really, like events happen in sequence and like things change from like causality, but like there was no like beginning of time or end of time. Like that seems weird, right? So like the idea that like we've had observations up to the point that that's now the theory that we have, to me is like a very strange thing that I think like maybe young people have grown up with that idea being normal up until this point. So to us, it seems like sort of like, well, that's self-evidently what the scientific community believes. But I can appreciate that like when that theory was first posited, it must be very strange, right?
Yeah. I like that you have an issue with that.
Me too.
This is from a book called The Science Delusion by Rupert Sheldrake. But this quote's from Terence McKenna, who people may or may not know is he was like one of the original like psychonauts, like took a bunch of mushrooms and wrote books. But he said, what orthodoxy teaches us about time is that the universe sprang from utter nothingness in a single moment. It's almost as if science said, give me this one miracle, and from there, the entire thing will proceed with a seamless causal explanation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like, since we're talking about like God, right? Like that's one of the sort of apologia arguments that I find the most somewhat like compelling, right? Is like you have these sort of like religious like thinkers nowadays who will make the argument like, look, we were telling you that it all started with this like all of a sudden it was like, like sprung into being, right? And you would say like that's not what happened, but all of a sudden now you're the ones that are saying that.
Right.
Like from a religious perspective, it is, it has to be something to be able to say like, no, like we predicted that before like science got there,
Yeah, and I think, rightly or wrongly, a lot of religious people just find that as validation.
Well, yeah, like it seems difficult not to.
Yeah. But then the bigger question is like, what caused that event?
That's the thing though, is if that's the beginning of time, there can't be a cause, right? This goes back to this like the prime mover thing, right? Because like the whole idea of, I don't know if we've gotten to the quote where Seth specifically talks about a prime mover. Did we?
Does he use that term?
He uses the term specifically. And that comes out of like Aristotle. It talks about like the unmoved mover. And like the reason that's in Aristotle is because Aristotle's trying to give in his physics an accounting of like basic causality of physical phenomena. And it's actually really difficult to do that, to describe why causality happens in time. And like he needs it as like a necessary part of his like physical accounting, that he has to posit that there's this unmoved force that begins the course of causality, and that it has to not be caused by anything else. It just has to itself be self-sufficient, and then it sets off everything else, you know?
Well, we were talking a little bit about Schopenhauer last week, and in his book, The World is Will and Representation, like he goes in great lengths to explain that, yeah, like cause and effect fits only in physical reality, where there's like this, you're using the term phenomenal and it was tripping me up, but like I wasn't realizing that there's like this opposite side of the nominal, right? Which is like, what would be a good definition of nominal?
Would nominal be, that's the one that's like the opposite of the physical, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of that's the will, right? Because it's the world as will and as representation, where representation is phenomenal, will is nominal, right?
But it's kind of like the same move. Like you have to, it seems like it's the same move. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Aristotle is just like saying there has to be like this, we have to get outside of the rules of this dimension to posit a prime mover.
No, I think he thinks it's part of the rules. Where like if you accept his rules and they work in every circumstance, then if you follow the chain all the way up, there needs to be something that sets the dominoes in motion, right? There needs to be something that's like fully like so actual that it actualizes everything else, but is itself self-caused or uncaused.
But isn't that a different set of rules? Doesn't that make it of a different dimension?
It's kind of the thing you were saying before, like grant me this one miracle, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think we're kind of there with Seth too. When you say like there can't be a beginning to time because, or how did you put it? It was much more eloquently.
I mean, if you believe in time, right? Like I think the standard account of what you could say time is, right? If you're trying to define it, you'd say time is like the arrow of causality.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that happen and they cause other things. And that process is a one-way street. It doesn't go the other way.
There's change and there's the ability to notice change.
Right. And we existentially, one of our first principles is that we exist in a state that we can observe causality taking place, right?
But like where this material goes is that there's different dimensions of the experience of time, where like somebody has like an exponentially higher frame rate of that perception of change. So that expands like their view of a single moment.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that doesn't fundamentally change what time is, right?
Well,
like frame rate doesn't really matter to the nature of time.
Maybe not, but I think in some way it does more than we're saying in that statement, because I think it, like all reality is, you know, dependent on a subject, you know, and so therefore that makes all the difference.
You could posit potentially like a multidimensionality, right? Whereas instead of time being defined as like the direction of causality, because in this definition, it's a monodirectional like description, right?
Mm-hmm.
The arrow only goes one way. You could have it be like, if you posit multiple dimensions, you could have it be time is sort of a trend that's moving within a larger idea space where like you can have branches, you know, but you need to posit a higher dimensionality to be able to do that.
Yep.
So then you start getting into the question of like, okay, well, we were using time as a fundamental dimension to describe reality. Now we need these other dimensions to be able to describe time. What are those? Because that's going to be the fundamental thing, right? So time stops being as like essential if you move into that sort of worldview, right?
I was with you until that last sentence. What do you mean it stops being essential?
Because like, I mean, on like sort of the most popular, I would argue, like current understanding of like the nature of like the reality that we live in, time is like the fundamental dimension.
Yeah.
Like space-time.
Like I was using the term last year, like space-time is like, the materialists believe like that is the container in which we exist in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's the fundamental thing behind reality. is the fact that causality is happening. Because like you can imagine like an object not existing, like the possibility of an object not being there, right? But like the possibility of causality itself not happening is like incomprehensible.
Mhm.
Like our understanding of the world doesn't make sense without causality. It's so fundamentally baked into our experience.
Yep.
You know? And the same thing with, this is some Kant stuff, right? Is like he would argue that like that one's fundamental, and like our understanding of like, I think he would say space is also fundamental. That like we can't conceive of a world without like spatial differences.
I mean, space and time are really connected, right?
Yeah, that's like a later thing, right? That's the Einstein thing.
It's also kind of intuitive. Like, it's hard to imagine one without the other. It's maybe impossible.
I don't know.
What is time without space?
I mean, you can just close your eyes and experience time, right?
Yeah.
So like you didn't need space to be able to do that.
And space without time is just like an unmoving environment.
Yeah.
It's just frozen.
Just imagine a rock with a certain, breadth and width, and then imagine that nothing happens to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's space without time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does that leave us now?
Well, because you were asking me to sort of more eloquently describe like why time needs to be like continuous, right? And like if you believe that there's this like really important directionality that causality gives you, like the arrow of time, and you think that that's a fundamental dimension of reality because it's fundamental to our existence, then you're positing that causality is like a fundamental nature of reality. But causality requires that like if there is an event, there's something that caused it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you go further back in time, you should find more events or more causes for the events that then become the causes for current events. And you should be able to do that ad infinitum.
Yeah, it's either infinite or there's another dimension happening.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I got one more paragraph on 204. This awareness gives personal experience with the multidimensional richness that exists not apart from, but intermingled with, within, through, and all about your physical world of sense. To say that physical life is not real is to deny that reality pervades all appearance and is a part of all appearance. In the same manner, God does not exist apart from or separate from physical reality, but exists within it, and as a part of it, as he exists within and as a part of all other systems of existence. I always thought this even as a child, like, I guess it's that same idea of like, God kind of has to be everything you can imagine and more. But I think it is a common belief that people think God is something outside of this reality play that we're in.
Yeah. In this context, it's interesting because it seems that because we're talking about possible worlds, right? Like mathematically or like formally speaking, like what is meant by saying that something is present in every possible world is the idea of necessity, right? Like for something to be necessarily true, it has to be true in every possible world. So like that's the classic feature of God, right? Is that God should be necessary. Therefore, God should exist in all possible realities. Because if there was one possible reality that God didn't exist, you'd start questioning like the nature of what God is.
Yeah, it's necessary for God, but not for other things.
No. So like, this is sort of a formal definition, right? Like what necessity is to be present in all possible realities. So like if I say like 1 + 1 = 2 is necessarily true, then I'm saying no matter what reality you live in, that mathematical fact still holds.
Aren't you just saying that?
When I use the word necessarily, it's like with a capital N, and it exists across all realities. Isn't it just kind of like?
Well, I'm trying to provide insight into like, formally speaking, if we're talking about possible world semantics and we're talking about God existing in all worlds, this is what this would mean to somebody who like studies the sort of the like logical semantics of these things, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to like put it on this level because it's definitely not. But like if I had a moment that was on par with Jane's like reality as idea construction moment, it was, I don't know, when I was 20 or something. I just thought like, what if this reality is God's thought?
What do you mean?
I don't know. It just like, it was just an analogy. Like, what if that's what this reality is? Like, because it always made sense to me that like what he's saying in that paragraph that I just read, that God exists within it and as a part of it, that like in some sense that's what we are. And I don't think it necessarily has to, be as profound as it maybe I wanted to say, but like it's
No.
just an analogy.
No, I think that's directly like kind of what's being said here.
Yeah.
Because that's like sort of the Neoplatonic idea, right? That like God exists first, and then God has these like perfect ideas, and then those ideas eventually descend into becoming the forms, right? Like the Platonic like ideas with a capital I. And then those Platonic ideas eventually get instantiated into physical reality in their like more like imperfect forms.
Yeah. Well, and it maybe gets to Seth's idea of what ideas can be. Like the idea is having consciousness and wanting to experience form.
Right, exactly. Where like
Yeah.
form is given a role above,
Yeah.
the merely physical.
All right, Joe, where do you want to go?
Hey, you have it highlighted. What's the best way of getting into this story?
Maybe the next paragraph is where he first brings up Christ.
The threefold Christ.
Your Christ figure represents symbolically your idea of God and his relationships. There were 3 separate individuals whose history blended, and they became known collectively as Christ, hence many discrepancies in your records. These were all males because at the time of your development, you would not have accepted a female counterpart. These individuals were a part of one entity. You could not but imagine God as a father. So that's where we're going.
Right, yeah. So you have Christ is not one guy. Christ is 3 guys. But they're all part of the same entity. So it's sort of like the Christ entity.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We still have sort of like the Trinity is still present. Or
the Holy Trinity.
the Holy Trinity, right? You've got like 3 persons, 1 entity.
I think that's a coincidence.
But yeah.
So if anybody's like getting their torches and pitchforks out, we're still technically
Technically within dogma, I believe.
It took me a while to sort out all the details. Like, I don't think I like picked up on all this the first time around. But he's saying they existed as incarnated people, but the events, or a lot of the major events, necessarily weren't physical in the same way.
Should I read the next part?
Sure.
This comes after a long pause. So this is in italics, so there's a long pause before this. So Seth collects himself and then says, the events as they are recorded, however, did not occur in history. The crucifixion of Christ was a psychic but not a physical event. Ideas of almost unimaginable magnitude were played out. Judas, for example, was not a man in your terms. He was, like all the other disciples, a blessed, created, fragment personality formed by the Christ personality. He represented the self-betrayer. He dramatized a portion of each individual's personality that focuses upon physical reality in a grasping manner and denies the inner self out of greed. Each of the 12 represented qualities of personality that belonged to one individual, and Christ as you know him represented the inner self. The 12, therefore, plus Christ as you know him, the only one figure composed out of the 3, represented an individual earthly personality, the inner self, and 12 main characteristics connected with the egotistical self. As Christ was surrounded by the disciples, so the inner self is surrounded by those physically oriented characteristics, each drawn outward toward the daily reality on the one hand, and yet orbiting the inner self.
Joe, I think you got another personality test on your hands here.
Yeah, which disciple are you?
This made me think, like, the 7 dwarfs, or Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, they were onto something there.
Yeah.
Because there was, like, Bashful and Sleepy. Like, they had, like,
Yeah.
names for them.
Dopey and grumpy.
Yeah. I don't know if anywhere he describes any of these disciples besides Judas.
I don't remember.
And it's interesting that one of the 12 is a self-betrayer.
Betrayer.
Not just a betrayer, but a self-betrayer. So that's somehow part of, like, this official existence, I guess. That leaves me with a lot more questions than answers. But Joel, you're hearing this for the first time. Where do you want to go with this?
It's cool. I don't know. Yeah, like you can make little psychograms. You can make like, oh, I'm actually this apostle. I'm actually this apostle. I'm like half this apostle and half this other apostle. Like,
I feel like this was always like a high school level, like, criticism of Christianity. Like, well, if Judas didn't exist, then Jesus wouldn't have died for our sins. So therefore Judas is, really important. Like, I feel like a more elementary version of Christianity, like, uses the term Judas, like, synonymously with the betrayer, or like wants to, like, call people Judas when they, do shit like that. But like, this is just like part of a drama that needed to play out.
Yeah, and like it sort of just fits with like our current understanding of Christianity anyways, because it sort of already is sort of a drama that continually plays out. Like that's what doing like, church going is like to replay the drama.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this sort of like thing is also like what makes like certain branches of Christianity very compelling to certain people. Like it's, as like a person who was raised as like in a Protestant family, like it seems like that's the cool thing about Catholicism. Is like no matter what you want to do, you can be like, oh, there's like a saint I can pray to.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a saint of like being a baker. There's like a saint of being a gardener. Like there's a saint of like crossing, the street and not looking both ways. Like
You get polytheism for the price of monotheism.
exactly. And like everyone wants polytheism. It's cool because it has deep lore.
Yeah.
And like right now we're getting like lore.
I never thought of it that way before. When I hear like was a psychic but not a physical event, ideas of almost unimaginable magnitude were played out. It makes sense the way that Christianity has like a persistent force through history. Like it's definitely like waned and waxed, right? But like when I look at the role it's played in our culture, it doesn't seem to me like that could just happen if it was just a physical event. Like I think what he's saying here and maybe later on is like people have like a deep psychic impression like through their dreaming of these events. They're like connecting with them, and that's why so many people are so impassioned about like this religion.
Yeah.
To me, that's a better explanation, even though one that can't really be substantiated with our abilities. Then, it just was this like dramatic event, and then it just got passed down through history.
Yeah. It's like the witchiest version of Christianity I've ever heard. They're like getting together to do this like weird ritual,
Because, jumping ahead just a page, he says, this drama continues to exist. It does not belong, for example, to your past. Only you have placed it there. This does not mean it always reoccurs. That's kind of like serving my point, I think, is just like, even now people are really connected with like Christianity, and like because we have these limited ideas of what reality is, we get that like emotional certainty from this like psychic connection, and then we bring it back into the world and study the worldly things that we have that include the church and the Bible and etc.
Right.
Which are way more distorted than whatever you were feeling in that like psychic mystical space.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you think it's cool, Joe. Like I think the first time I read this, I was like, What was your impression the first time you read it? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I think it blew my mind because I had never heard of that concept before.
I think the first time I read it, I was like, I wanted Seth to like shut up about things that were like controversial, because I thought it was going to like prevent, these ideas from getting out there.
I think I felt some of that, but not necessarily that he wants to shut up. I was just like, wow, if Jane was really gonna, if this is just like schizophrenia and Jane wants to make this pretty believable as not herself, then this is probably not the way to go about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Similar idea.
No, that's true, right? Because like that's what's compelling about it, is that it sort of allows for the mythology to become a reflection of like, like mental events. Like that's why like framing apostles as like not people but as like elements of a personality is like so compelling, because then it gives you a framework by which you can analyze your own psychology.
Yeah.
And like if they were full complete people, there would be contradictions. It would be messy, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, like people are messy, but like psychological like principles are simple.
Yeah. And we can boil it down to like parables and like perform that same function without understanding it in the same way.
Right.
It's interesting.
Should I read some more?
Sure.
The disciples therefore were given physical reality by the inner self, as all of your earthly characteristics come out of your inner nature. This was a living parable made flesh among you, a cosmic play worked out for your behalf, couched in terms that you could understand. The lessons were made plain, as all the ideas behind them were personified. if you will forgive the term, it was like a local morality play, but it was in your corner of the universe. This does not mean it was less real than you previously supposed. In fact, the implications of what is said here should clearly hint at the more powerful aspects of godhood. So yeah, it literally, like, it was put on as sort of like a ritualistic morality play, like the crucifixion, that is, right? And like, if you imagine, you know, like the course of like what a magical ritual is like that's kind of necessary to it, right? Is like the participant is not acting as a person, they're acting as a representation of a more fundamental like principle, right? And like here we're saying that like you're manifesting these other personalities to act as simply like one psychological principle and not as like a person, so that you can sort of organize them in a way that is more universal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's just a lot going on there.
The 3 Christ personalities were born upon your planet and indeed became flesh among you. None of these was crucified. The 12 disciples were materializations from the energies of these 3 personalities, their combined energies. They were then fully endowed with individuality, however, but their main task was to clearly manifest within themselves certain abilities inherent within all men. The same kind of dramas in different ways have been given, and while the drama is always different, it is always the same. This does not mean that a Christ has appeared within each system of reality. It means that the idea of God has manifested within each system in a way that is comprehensible to the inhabitants.
That paragraph makes a lot of sense to me.
I always think about like people like to joke about like the Pope has been like very out with like the idea that like if aliens ever show up, he would be very happy to like baptize the aliens, right? Because like they ask like, oh, like we must be so lucky that we're the only ones that had Christ living on our planet, or did they have alien Jesus on like alien planets, you know?
Yeah, it's the same concept like during like colonialism and all that bullshit, right? Like we got to save the savages because they don't have our God.
Yeah, like if you were living on South America, how unlucky were you? Like there was no way for you to hear the word from like the main event in all of human history that happened like way over there in like the Middle East.
Right. There's a couple good quotes somewhere in the Seth material about this idea, and I can't think of where they would be, but it comes up a lot but like psychic reality is so much bigger than the confines of physical reality, and these events are actually happening at that level, and they just pierce through into this level, and we are experiencing just what fits. It's like I think somewhere I use the analogy of like the crest of a wave or something, just like this tip is the part that we can see, but there's this whole force underneath that is just because it's like connected to this larger mass, we don't even recognize it as part of the wave.
It's so metal.
There we go.
Because
Goes back.
Because it's like, you can imagine that there's like a pocket dimension where there's like these weird wizards doing this like giant like BDSM ritual, and there's like a million slaves like racked up on the walls, and there's like all this chanting and shit. But like this is all in this little tiny bubble, and then all of a sudden the bubble goes like what? And like bleeds out into like larger reality, and you get these like huge just like the whole like storms and everything. And people are like, oh my god, why is it raining blood or whatever? And it's like, we actually had this pocket dimension this whole time where we were doing this ritual outside of time so that we could affect like reality. You know, it's got like that kind of vibe to it.
For sure. But that's partly where I get to like inherent in the fabric of reality is like some sort of like ethics or moral, because like, so we're not creating universes that rain blood.
Yeah.
You know? Otherwise, there would be some pretty dark places.
Yeah, man. We just made shit like what ritual did someone have to do to make like Chernobyl be a thing, you know?
Yeah. Have you seen that series?
I watched like parts of it. I haven't watched the whole thing, but it's crazy,
It's
dude.
really disturbing.
Like the part where the helicopter like flies over and then just like melts.
I remember that. I just remember like the actual physical effects of like radiation, and oh my god.
I only saw the first episode and I was like, okay, I can't.
It's fucked up.
All of our like zombie shows are like mild compared to like what actually happened to some of those people, like what the changes their bodies experienced.
Yeah.
Oh my god. They should literally just euthanize them when it happens and not just like wait it out, I think.
Oh yeah, don't wait till like all your skin starts melting off.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
Liana, what are you thinking of this?
I'm just reading.
It's not your thing.
I mean, I'm reading this and I just randomly thought, like, do you guys know about the Shroud of Turin?
Oh yeah.
Heard of it?
It's-
What is it?
It's supposedly like the face that was placed on Jesus's body, and someone found this cloth,
Mm.
and they think it's a Shroud of Turin because it kind of looks like it has the impression of a face. I just remember like growing up and watching documentaries about it on like Discovery Channel or something, and the crucifixion really was fake. Is this just someone's like misplaced bath cloth or something?
Oh yeah, there's all those relics. You know that I swear to God, there's like an actual church that claims that like Jesus's like foreskin or something.
Well, yeah, and then there's like churches where like there'll be like a leak from the ceiling, and then it like forms the Virgin Mary as it like leaks down. You know,
Yeah.
like there's that one. It's like super cool. I think they have like Mary's skull or something, but they like put it in a shrine that's like a whole big golden like model of her, but then they put the skull like in it. So it's this huge like super intricate gold thing with just like a skull in the middle. It's super cool.
That is pretty cool.
I'm like, would I want that to happen if my descendants did that to me? Would that be disrespectful or would it be cool?
It'd be sick.
You got to check that box in your driver's license.
Do not bury me in the solid gold.
You have my permission to
Turn me into a shrine.
make my skull into a shrine.
I mean, I've been working on the paperwork for that right now.
Yeah.
But what if it turns into a tourist trap, Joe? Would you still be happy about that?
Into a tourist trap?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want pilgrimages. I want people to bring their ailing relatives to me so I can heal them.
No, I mean your skull encased in a shrine of gold. They're
Yeah.
selling like plastic cups of that.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay.
Hell
He's
yeah,
on
dude.
board.
That's immortality, man. Well, I don't know if I told you this, but like I have been actually trying to like set it up so that when I die, they put my bones into this like crypt that they have where they do like long-term studies of like different human anatomy things. So it's like I'm trying to get my bones put in the bone box.
Is it hard to get in?
I don't think it's that hard. You just
Is
have
it
to like
the-
not die from certain things, and then you have to set it up so that you can get your body transported.
Mm.
Because like it has to be kind of fresh for them to do what they want to do.
But like you have to provide the resources to transport it after.
Yeah, if you're not within so many miles of the city where it's at, you have to do it yourself. Otherwise, they'll do it for you if you're really close.
Yeah.
So the one thing is like if you end up dying of like something that's like a sort of a long-term degenerative thing, you could just like move to Tennessee and like be in the hospital there and then just have like the cab ready to go.
That's funny.
It like reminds me of like, you know, in like, is it like Italy or wherever they have the like catacombs with like all the like the entire walls are like made out of skulls, you know?
Pretty sure. Yeah.
At least according to video games, yes. If that doesn't work out, you could also... I don't know if you guys know about Henrietta Lacks. She had like some kind of cervical cancer, I think, and her cells have just... They were kept...
They still exist.
Yeah.
They do like research with them, right? Because they're the immortal like human cells. That's
Something like that.
yeah,
I think I heard the Radio Lab episode about it.
yeah. Because they had a book recently.
Oh, really?
Well, not recently anywhere. It was probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
Now that's true immortality, I guess, in a way.
It is. Go like it's the like horseshoe effect of evolution, right? You develop all this like point till you're like the super conscious like human being, just so that you can re-evolve into like a microorganism. You know?
I wonder what Seth would say about that. Because doesn't he say like there's, you know, like you're connected to all the people that know you and it's not necessarily a good thing? Something like that. I'll have to try to find that.
So Henrietta's just like not letting go.
I don't know if it would operate the same way, but it seems similar.
Immortality through spite.
Yeah.
It's like, I refuse to die. I will be dust that is alive. I don't care.
The sentence, whether or not the crucifixion occurred physically, it was a psychic event and exists as do all other events connected with the drama. Many were physical, but some were not. The psychic event affected your world quite as much as the physical one, as is obvious. The whole drama occurred as a result of mankind's need. It was created as a result of that need. It grew out of it, but it did not originate within your system of reality. Just don't hear him saying like whether or not, like he started out whether or not the crucifixion occurred physically. But I like it. I speak that way often. Like, it doesn't matter what this happened. Like, we can still draw this other conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Other religions were based upon different dramas in which ideas were acted out in a way that was comprehensible to various cultures. Unfortunately, the difference between the dramas often led to misunderstandings, and these were used as excuses for wars. These dramas are also privately worked out in the dream state. The God personified figures first were introduced to man in the dream state, and the way then prepared.
Yeah, that's sort of like the Unitarian idea, right? That like all different like religious like mythologies are like equally like valid, but just like in different ways. And I feel
Yeah.
like you need to sort of find like a compatibility between them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like hard to get there. See that there's like some truth in them. Like, I don't know how literally they take it. Like,
Yeah.
it just seems like a polite way to like be inclusive. And
Yeah.
I don't know much of the history of Unitarian, but like if I was going to go to a service, it might be like in the top 3.
No, they seem like a good church to me.
Yeah.
Because like, well, that's the thing, right? Is like, did we talk about this already? Like the whole like the melting pot idea being like sort of a progressive liberal accepting society. You need to like subordinate religions to like underneath like the larger social body.
Even if we did, you can expand on it if you want.
Yeah, we don't have to.
Okay.
I will leave the rest of the work as an
Yeah.
exercise to the listener.
Yeah, and I don't know how many religions have like prophets. I know Christianity does, like there's like the 3 wise men or something, like people like knew this was going to happen. So that's kind of makes his commentary that's along those lines. In visions and inspirations, men knew the Christ drama would be enacted and hence recognized it for what it was when it occurred physically. Its power and strength then returned to the dream universe. It had increased its vigor and intensity through the physical materialization. In private dreams, men then related to the main figures in the drama, and in the dream state, they recognized its true import.
I suppose with all the other Sethian stuff, that just sort of just makes sense, right? Because like we have a lot of activity happening while people are in a dream state, like with this, and then also like the death, leading kind of like thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at with like trying to say that like he implies elsewhere that these events are more true in that psychic state. They're larger than, and then they just kind of like they fit into this reality as much as they can.
Now, God is more than the sum of all the probable systems of reality he has created, and yet he is within each one of those without exception. He is therefore within each man and woman. He is also within each spider, shadow, and frog, and this is what man does not like to admit. That's like a direct biblical reference, right?
Maybe.
It's like something about like all the stones singing or something like that.
I don't remember. I just wrote on the side, I mentioned this last week, but God is a solipsist.
Well, yeah, necessarily, right? Like
Yeah.
the uncreated, like the unmoved mover has to be like sort of themselves sufficient. Well, unless we're not aspects of them. Like that's the difference is like,
Yeah.
are we aspects of God or are we just made of God's stuff?
Yeah,
Is those-
if we're separate, then he's not a solipsist.
Right.
But, yeah. Then it's just a definition, basically.
Yeah. I had this one written down too. God can only be experienced, and you experience him whether or not you realize it through your own existence.
Yeah. Like that?
Well, it sort of like fits with some other like Christian like existentialists, right? Like that's sort of the thing that is really important about Kierkegaard, right? The idea of like the leap of faith. Like you can't prove that God's there. Like that's kind of the whole nature of it. It's like it needs to be like a conviction and like an experience. Like it needs to be existentially immediate to you,
And this is saying that whether you take that leap or not, you are experiencing God. It like makes everything sacred in that sense, I guess.
Yeah. The experience him whether you realize it or not is kind of like, that's a difficult one.
Well, if God is a solipsist, if he is a part of everything, then that just follows from there.
Yeah, you get much more into the sort of like the deism, right? Of like, because like that's one of the groups of people who really like the like prime mover argument, like early like American like thinkers were big on the like, the clockmaker theory.
It just like, so God just like sets up the universe and then like steps back and lets it happen.
Right. Or that like you could see it also as, because like that's their sort of like modernist way of putting it. But like you could also see it as sort of like a more romantic sense where it's like God is the thing that provides the essence to reality, but like he isn't coming in and individually tweaking each thing. He's simply like being there and allowing the energy to flow from him. Like that's all he needs to do is like be an energy like source, like a battery. Because like if that's the case, then like your vital energy is just like a portion of that vital energy without you being necessarily identical with like the consciousness of God, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think like how Seth would jump off from that idea. Because I think, yeah, like the energy is provided. I think he would always stress that individuality always operates. But then that whatever is created is still also a part of God. Like we can't create anything that isn't a part of all that is. And when you term it all that is instead of God, it makes it a lot easier to make that jump.
Is that where Seth goes with it? Because so far, like God is sort of the like necessary source and an element in all things, but I don't know if we've like identified that God is literally the set of just every single thing that exists.
Well, I mean, he's using this term capital A, capital T, capital I, all that is.
Oh, there it is.
Chapter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get to that.
Or is that just coming up here?
No, that's just coming up right.
Okay. We got the paragraph before that quick here. On the other hand, he is human in that he is a portion of each individual, and within the vastness of his experience, he holds an idea shape of himself as human, to which you can relate. He literally was made flesh to dwell among you, for he forms your flesh in that he is responsible for the energy that gives vitality and validity to your private, multidimensional self, which in turn forms your image in accordance with your ideas.
That's kind of a cheeky one.
Does that remind you of like the Platonic ideals at all? Like that first sentence, the idea shape of himself as human?
Yeah, like you could say that like presumably like the Platonic ideal of like human would emanate from God. I feel like in a lot of those theories though, they don't want to posit like a Platonic ideal of human because they always see humans as like rarefied beings where we each have our own Platonic ideal. Which is like our,
Couldn't both be
purpose.
true?
Both could be true. I'm really suspicious of the second one because it seems really like anthropocentric, right?
Yeah.
Like it would be just so convenient if like you could write a self-help book about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like why the ideas became popular is because they had like sort of a hook to them.
Like the idea that each individual can be like perfected
Yeah.
with and maintain their individuality.
And still maintain their individuality. Because people hate the idea that like you simply have like a human nature that we all share, you know?
That's an interesting question.
But like I like this, like he literally was made flesh to dwell among you. Not because like that's like the biblical quote, right? Like not because of Jesus, but because of you. Like you're the flesh that he was made to dwell among you because he's in you, you know?
That is a cool spin.
And then after that it says, this private multidimensional self or the soul has then an eternal validity. We did it. We got there. It is upheld, supported, maintained by the energy, the inconceivable vitality of capital A, all, capital T, that, capital I is. All that is.
That's basically Seth's term for God, generally. It says, it cannot be destroyed then, this inner self of yours, nor can it be diminished. It shares in those abilities that are inherent within all that is. It must therefore create as it is created, for this is the great giving that is behind all dimensions of existence, the spilling over from the fountain of all that is. I read that one already, but I like it.
There you have some emanation talk, right? The fountain, the spilling over.
Yeah, that's how I jumped ahead to that.
Yeah.
I just didn't see that word. Do you think that word's in there or just doesn't need to be?
I thought it was in 207, but maybe it's like I was talking about this like fountain metaphor.
Yeah.
So then the next session they have like a visitor, right? Do you want to finish off with this one?
I just have like basically a page left here, and I don't know what you guys have, but
I wrote Carl Jones is wasting taxpayer money.
because
Here, I'll read the italics at the beginning of this one. Just as the session was about to begin at 9:15, Jane said she thought we'd be interrupted somehow or have visitors. Not 15 seconds later, there was a knock at the door. It was Carl Jones. He teaches a high school course called Inner and Outer Space in a small city in Connecticut. The class uses Jane's book, The Seth Material, as a text. Carl is on his way to a destination near Niagara Falls, New York for the Thanksgiving holidays. This man is using the Seth materials to teach a high school course? Like, what?
Yeah. That'd be pretty cool, though. I mean, depending on your end. But, like, yeah, I don't think he's got approval of the school board or whatever.
Yeah. Somebody needs to get an auditor in there ASAP.
As a teacher, that offends your ethics.
My sense of responsible pedagogy.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, he doesn't really talk too much to Carl. He just gets right into this material. Says, the multidimensional aspects of all that is, such a reality can only be experienced. There are no facts that can be given that can portray with any faithfulness the attributes of all that is. This reality and those attributes will appear within various systems of actuality in keeping with the camouflage data of any given system. The inner experience with the multidimensional God can come in two main areas. One is through the realization that this prime moving force is within everything that you can perceive with your senses. The other method is to realize that this primary motive force has a reality independent of its connection with the world of appearances. So there's your prime moving force.
Prime moving
reference.
force, yeah.
These two methods, I don't know if I fully understand. You guys have a grip on this?
I feel like they don't seem like they're alternatives to each other, right? They seem like more like corollaries to each other.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like they're they need to be necessarily separated either.
Yeah, no, the fact that they're both like methods, right?
Yeah. What it made me think of, like flashing back to our debate last week, what we're trying to decide is like which thing exists independent of the other. Like that becomes the primary reality, right?
Right.
Does the material world exist independent of the mental, or does the mental exist independent of the physical? That's the question that we didn't really explicate, but that we were trying to answer.
Right. Because like, especially when we're talking about this sort of outside of causal time and sort of like way of viewing things, like something being primary and something being secondary stops being like one is before the other one, and it starts being more like one is like or like metaphysically prior to the other. Like they can both exist in the same times, but like one depends on the other one for its existence, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I like this idea. All personal contact with a multidimensional God, all legitimate moments of mystic consciousness will always have a unifying effect. They will not therefore isolate the individual involved, but instead will enlarge his perceptions until he will experience the reality and uniqueness of as many other aspects of reality of which he is capable.
Yeah, I like that too.
The idea of like a unifying effect is like interesting.
That describes basically a good trip.
Okay, yeah, right.
It does. Like anyone that's taken any psychedelics, that's their experience if it's good.
So you can know that someone is lying to you if they say they had a spiritual experience, but it didn't provide it unifying.
We're all one, man.
You know, this stoner that just...
Yo, we're all actually two. You're like, this guy's lying.
This is not a legitimate moment of mystic consciousness. Screw you.
Screw you. Yeah.
Yeah, like imagine someone coming out of a trip and being like, yeah, we're all actually very separate from one another.
That's funny.
Even the term like coming out of, like, that's where my mind goes. Like they're coming out of like the unification back to individuality to like tell you with an exterior personality one to another.
Right.
It's funny how much is just built into that. This session and chapter end very weirdly to me, but like I think the actual end of the chapter is basically this. I've tried to give you some idea of the far-reaching creative effects of your own thoughts. With that in mind, then, it is impossible to imagine the multidimensional creativities that can be attributed to all that is. The term all that is can be used as a designation to include all of those probable gods in all of their manifestations. Now it is easier, perhaps, for some of you to understand the simple stories and parables of beginnings of which I have spoken. but the time has come for mankind to take several steps further to expand the nature of his own consciousness by trying to comprehend a more profound version of reality. You have outgrown the time of children's tales. That's kind of the bow on the chapter. The rest of the chapter is like, we touched upon this last week, where he's like suggesting that they go to the back room so the door doesn't.
Oh yeah. Time to outgrow children's tales. It's interesting.
He says stuff like that too, a lot too. Like, we're at a time where we need to like change our ideas. And I also feel like that's kind of like a pat on the head. It's like, it's cool to think of this time as like an interesting moment in our idea of reality. And when you start like thinking in those terms and looking at the world, you can see things changing. Like, we talk a lot about, like you mentioned it earlier, like the way our culture defines like alternate timelines. Like, that's all over cartoons and shows and movies right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been like a mainstream like dissemination of the idea. Yeah.
And it's, I mean, before that it existed in more like esoteric, like science fiction, but I feel like the artists always get there first. Like Jane's, I think you said essay, but I think it was a poem.
Might have been.
I like this idea that the artists get there first. Like, these ideas come into reality. That is the actual act of artistic creation, is like connecting with this like higher psychic ideas. Like we were talking about, these events don't fit in this reality. The artist has to like translate them into a way we can comprehend physically. Then they exist, then it gets picked up by, you know, scientists and mainstream, and then our paradigms shift eventually.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I think once said that like the truth comes as fiction first.
Really?
And somewhere.
I want to try to.
And my interpretation was that like it sort of whets people's appetites or dips their toes into accepting something crazy before it happens.
Yeah, you need to kind of crack open their belief system before it can be completely changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
We're in a world of that happening right now, I would argue.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of dystopian science fiction.
Oh my god.
Yeah, hopefully it's not.
That direction, but
We're living in a much more cyberpunk world than we were a year ago, I would say. I'm getting ready to put on a cool bomber jacket and
just
shave my-
because of like the political climate.
I mean, we have a group of like, 20-something-year-old hackers that are like hacking the mainframe of the government. It's like very cyberpunk.
It's so bananas.
Yeah.
Couldn't have predicted it. Yeah.
We shouldn't do too much current events in the podcast to update the episode.
Yeah. It's context. I feel like if someone drank every time I said
In
context.
this episode, they'd be pretty shit-faced.
Everyone out here always talking about all that is. How about we talk about all that isn't?
Yeah. Need representation. You guys got anything else?
If there's anybody from the school district listening, I'm not using this as a textbook in my classes. You do not need to audit me.
Not yet.
Not yet.
We're still in the early stages of Joe's brainwashing.
True.
Ha ha ha.
Just give it a couple years. So we'll get to the Carl Jones level.
Yep. Sethian Kool-Aid. All right, guys. Should we call it?
See you later.
See ya. That's our show, but fear not, the never-ending conversation continues next week. If you're enjoying the show, please be so kind as to subscribe, like, rate, and review, and if you're feeling frisky, tell a friend. Contact us at implicatingthereal@gmail.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/implicatingthereal. We are doing our best, but whatever support you can lend helps us appreciably. We are not affiliated with the publishers or proprietors, but we encourage you to get the books. You can follow along as we endeavor to dive deep into the Sethian worldview, and there's really nothing like cultivating your own relationship with the material. Until next week, we wish you a fun good evening.